I was thinking about the biggest test for Dan Lanning and his staff this year, and I realized the answer's staring me in the face.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Loaded show today, as always. Kenyon Sadiq has got to stay healthy. I'll dive into the post-spring tight end room and thoughts on Will Stein as the offensive coordinator, all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. So, let's think about Dan Lanning, the coaching staff, who have gotten better every year. 22 to 23, improvement. 23 to 24, improvement. That was reflected in the record. I don't know that the record will necessarily do that again. If Oregon wins 14 or more games, hey, 2 thumbs up. No complaints from this guy over here if that takes place. But the idea of either Dante Moore or Austin Novosad starting is a legitimate challenge and point of evaluation for Dan Lanning and Will Stein. Because this is a completely new situation for them at the most important position on the field. The last 2 guys to start for Oregon have been Bo Nix and Dillon Gabriel, who during their time with the Ducks individually set their own record for the most games played at quarterback in the history of college football. It might even have been regardless of position. They were the most experienced players in the history of that spot. That doesn't mean quarterback development didn't take place. You can't look at what Bo Nix did in 3 years at Auburn and then contrast that with what he did in 2 years at Oregon and say, well, there wasn't any development. It was just a plug and play. Not Dillon Gabriel was more of a plug and play. He was mostly the same guy, right around where I expected him to be. Of course, got himself to be a Heisman finalist on the back of making a lot of winning football plays. His stats were not as gaudy as Bo Nix's were in 2023 in his Heisman finalist season, but Dillon Gabriel came in and you knew what to expect. Why? He'd played a lot of football. He had a couple of injury seasons, got some years back. He played a lot of football. And Bo Nix had played a lot of football, needed to get better, and he did. You are now inserting, in all likelihood, Dante Moore. Maybe it's Austin Novosad. Maybe. Crazier things have happened in the world of college football. I mean, Nico is a UCLA Bruin, all right? Anything could happen, truly. But this is the first time where Oregon, with this staff going into year 4, has their homegrown quarterback recruit. And yeah, Dante Moore was a transfer. In no way do I view him in the same vein that I look at Bo Nix or Dillon Gabriel. I was this close to saying Bo Gabriel. I was so close to saying that. But this is the first time where Dan Lanning and Will Stein have a young, somewhat unproven, but incredibly talented quarterback, and now they've got to develop him into a star, or at least something that resembles a star to get Oregon to where they want to be in the next couple of years. That's a pretty major challenge. I could readily make the case, amidst all the questions that this Oregon football roster has, losing your top 6 guys in the secondary, losing 3 defensive linemen who all got drafted, 2 more players off the defense at linebacker, a couple of receivers, 4 offensive linemen, plenty of question marks all over the place that this coaching staff hopefully is going to be able to answer. If they don't, Oregon can miss the playoff. But if they do, Oregon makes the playoff. And I think our confidence level collectively about this Oregon staff takes a step forward if they do all of those things. But I think the biggest one is the quarterback position, because everything should be there for Dante Moore to be good this year at the very least and great next year. I have loftier hopes for him in 26 than 25. But this fall, certainly I expect Dante Moore to be good enough. And, of all the aspects about this Oregon coaching staff under Dan Lanning that we have seen, this is one we haven't seen yet. It doesn't mean that they can't do it. History would tell you they will, because Will Stein's track record with quarterbacks in his last several seasons as an offensive coordinator, really good. They've all been over 70% completion and have put up really good passing statistics. So all the tools are right there. And yeah, Will Stein, this is, in my view, an evaluation of both Will Stein and Dan Lanning. And yes, Lanning is a defensive guy. He was the defensive coordinator at Georgia. I'm sure in team meetings throughout the week, he spends more time on that side of the ball. But something I have long pushed back on that I come across in a lot of just casual conversations, or, hear guys like Colin Cowherd say, well, he's a defensive head coach, so he doesn't have anything to do with the quarterback. Like, my skin crawls when I hear that. Like, do you think that Bill Belichick and Tom Brady never talk during a game just because Bill's a defensive guy? You think Kirby Smart ever had a conversation with Stetson Bennett about what he saw after making a mistake, how he could improve, or what kind of look he wanted to get into? No, Kirby Smart's not calling the plays, but I have always rejected the notion that, he's a defensive head coach, so he doesn't have anything to do with the quarterback. Yeah, ridiculous suggestion. Ridiculous. So, yes, I evaluate Stein more because he's the play caller and quarterback coach, but I also am going to evaluate Dan Lanning on, hey, what do you do with a guy who you have to get into the right mindset every week? You got to have the right game plan for and be on the same page with the rest of your coaching staff and all that sort of stuff. So I think that's a really significant kind of prove it moment or opportunity for this Oregon staff amidst several chances to show Oregon fans that, hey, this is going to be an annual playoff deal. If this year, with all the turnover from last season roster-wise, sees Oregon get to the playoff, and I think it will, I think any Oregon fans' confidence in the coaching staff should go up. But I think the biggest point of evaluation is, hey, this is the first time where you've had a guy waiting in the wings, learn the system for a year. It's the same offensive coordinator, so there's no turnover. He's going to have plenty of support as long as the offensive line is good, which I expect it to be. Maybe not at first because there are 4 new guys coming in with Poncho at center. That's a lot of turnover, and as we saw last season, can take a while to adjust to having that many new faces. Now, granted, they didn't actually find their starting rotation on the offensive line until the second half of the Boise State game, but then once they did, they were pretty darn good. Still, I'm allowing for a bit of an adjustment period along the offensive line. But as long as they are good, all the weapons are there, all the pieces are there for Oregon to go out and allow Dante Moore to be able to succeed. And quite frankly, if Dante Moore goes out and underperforms even my expectations, I don't have as high of expectations for him this year as some of you do, or maybe the Heisman odds do, where he's top 5 or 10 in the country. I think that's jumping the gun one season too early. But if he underperforms where I even expect him to be, frankly, I'd be pretty concerned. I would be pretty concerned given the system, the amount of time that he's been with Oregon, the amount of time that Lanning and company have had to put together a roster that can support a variety of quarterbacks. I'd be concerned. So I think that's one of the biggest evaluation points for Oregon going into next year is, does Dante Moore look like he is ready to start? Because if after 3 games I'm coming on the show and going, he looks overwhelmed still, that's a problem. If he comes out and looks like a Heisman finalist, hey, I'd certainly take that. I'm not placing that pressure on him. Not yet. That'll probably be a next year's offseason sort of conversation. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. Speaking of the offense, there might not be a more singularly important player to a position group on the team, offense or defense, than Kenyon Sadiq. First, this episode brought to you by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll find exactly what you need, delivered fast from coast to coast, just like the Big Ten. Los Angeles, Piscataway, New Jersey, yeah. Anyway. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. I like that a lot. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free TradeMaster program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage, and now it's your turn. Join the TradeMaster program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. You know how important second segment sips are to a good show? Almost as important as Kenyon Sadiq is to the tight end room. You see what I did there? The art of the transition, just like that. So Oregon needs Kenyon Sadiq to stay healthy. I don't have any worries about that, by the way. I'm just saying as a general note, throwing it out there, there is not a position group on Oregon's team that would suffer more of a drop-off if the starter got injured than tight end. And I am including quarterback, I am including running back, any spot, linebacker, any spot you want to go to. After what I saw in the spring game a while ago, I think this room is probably the lowest grade. Not probably. It is the lowest grade on the team. I felt that going into the spring game. I feel that coming out of it as well. So this is a position group that has Kenyon Sadiq, Jamari Johnson, the Louisville transfer, third-year guy, AJ Pugliano, who I don't know if we saw at all in the spring game, Roger Saliapaga, who I think is still working his way back from injury a little bit, and Vander Plug, the true freshman, who made a couple of really nice catches in the spring game. And Kenyon Sadiq has really grown his own hype train throughout the offseason. I've contributed to that, admittedly, because the guy is just a freak athlete. He's in the 6'4.5", 6'5" range, up to like 250 pounds, graded higher than Terrence Ferguson did last year, according to Pro Football Focus. When you talk about Oregon's receiving weapons, you can't overlook this guy. Because, yeah, he's a tight end, but he can be a heck of a lot more than your run-of-the-mill tight end. And Oregon's offense has used them a lot in the screen game. They used Sadiq a lot last year. They used Terrence Ferguson as well. I think those will kind of all be Sadiq reps now. Based on what we've seen, maybe another guy can emerge like a Roger Saliapaga or Jamari Johnson, but overall, I was not impressed. There weren't a ton of plays. It's just a spring game. I'm trying not to overreact to it, but I think the tight end room has questionable depth. And I'll explain my overall grade a little bit later on, but I'm going to gas up Kenyon Sadiq a little bit more. The hurdle that he put on display in that game was just fantastic. And Brock Thomas, the quarterback, hit him on a deep ball down the field. He's not like any other tight end Oregon has had. I love David Paulson. I love Terrence Ferguson, Ed Dixon, Colt Lyra, all the guys. They're not running a deep post corner or deep over route 40 yards down the field. That's not something they could do. But Sadiq is just a monster, just an absolute monster. And he's also an excellent blocker. I think we're going to see that a lot this year. Oregon needs that. I thought Tefrig was a solid blocker last year. They use him a lot in those sprint out concepts. Of course, tight ends have to block in the run game. I don't think Sadiq is going to have a problem with that at all. I think he can quickly become a household name, not just in this Oregon offense, but in the Big Ten or national college football landscape, because he made those 2 touchdown catches in the Big Ten championship game. He had the hurdle in that one. I think he's going to make some more plays throughout the year, and everybody will turn their head and go, oh, that looks like a first-round pick of tight end, because he kind of does. So, other notes from the spring game on this position group, I thought Vander Plug had a couple of really nice plays over the middle. He had a great catch, one in particular that was kind of in traffic when Achilles Smith Jr. was throwing on the run. He definitely looked, Vander Plug did, the true freshman, like he wasn't quite ready to step into a blocking role. So, it was one day, but again, true freshman, not a lot of guys really are. And Sadiq was, as a true freshman. Other tight ends can be, but, Plug is 6'6", 223, and he's someone that I don't think goes in the jumbo package right now in order to provide an extra blocker, unless he has to. Right? I don't think that's primarily where he's going to be at timeline wise. So I love Sadiq. I could not love him anymore. I will sing his praises from now until the end of time. But going into spring ball, I had this room graded as a C plus, slightly above average. After watching the spring game, I knock it down to a C, and there's nothing wrong with that. Remember, I'm a tough grader. I'm a very tough grader. C is average. I don't think Oregon has, compared to the rest of the conference of the country, a below average position group on the entire roster. I think Sadiq is bringing this grade up a lot, because Jamari Johnson, going into his third year of college football, coming over from Louisville, former 4-star recruit, had some talent there, but hasn't produced a lot at the college level just yet. So big expectations for him at that spot. Last year you could put 2 tight ends on the field and they were legitimate weapons. I don't know that Oregon has that this year. If Roger Saliapaga is healthy, I think he's the most interesting of all of these prospects after Kenyon Sadiq. And I love that Sadiq is there. And I was having a conversation with one of you the last time I talked about this room, saying, well, wait, if Sadiq's such a high-end player, why is the grade so low? Because I'm not evaluating one player. I'm evaluating the entire room. If the room is one injury away from there are no impact players in the room, especially for the offensive side of the ball, that's a problem. That is a problem. So I hope that this position group develops beyond what I expect, or what other people what I expect, and just what we have all seen so far. But primarily, just keep Kenyon Sadiq healthy. It'll probably be okay. But Jamari Johnson, a third-year guy, had a one-on-one in the end zone, and I think it was Naeem Offord or Trey McNutt who broke it up. Heck of a play there by the true freshman. And it does, on the one hand, make me excited about what that secondary can be, not just this year, but especially in the years to come with those 5 stars on the back end. It doesn't instill me with a ton of confidence that a third-year player is getting cooked by a true freshman regardless of star ratings. So I think that if this room can just be solid behind Kenyon Sadiq, it will be okay. But in the last couple of years, we have seen 2 or 3 tight ends make material impacts on the offense. I don't know where that comes from this position group. I don't know where it is. I don't think that it is there. So I definitely have my eye on what goes on here, because if you think about the way I've looked at all these position groups, and will continue to do so here on the show, there are plenty of other spots where if a guy were to go down, yes, there'd be a drop-off, but it wouldn't suddenly be, well, you don't have any impact players there. Like, think about the defensive line, which is probably the highest grade I'll give to a position group on the team. It was going into the spring game. Spoiler alert, it will be coming out of the spring game as well. If you took away an NFL caliber guy in Mateo Uyunglele, the defensive line would not be as good. Not trying to argue that. However, it would not be void of guys who I felt like you could rely on to be playmakers, at least from time to time, if not consistently. Because you'd still have Amari Washington in there, who I think is an NFL caliber player. You still have Tatum Tuioti, who could definitely make an NFL roster one day. You still have Bear Alexander, or Terrence Green, Aiden Breland. Like, there were so many guys that looked like they were impact players in that spring game, and I came away from the tight end room going, well, Vanderploeg can catch the ball. That's great. If he's more of a receiving threat, you got to be able to do both at the tight end spot. So I think it's a first world problem for this to be Oregon's weakest position group, because you have a guy who is a first round caliber NFL talent. Maybe because of position, he isn't. We just saw 2 tight ends, of course, go in the first round. So it is possible. And we saw Brock Bowers go in the first round. Sadiq can be that sort of guy. So I think he's pulling the whole room up. There's a lot on his shoulders this year, because there is not proven production in any way behind him. Whereas, you look at the receiver room or the running back room, let's say Mekhi Hughes goes down. Well, I think Mekhi Hughes is a little better than Noah Whittington, but I don't think Oregon's run game would suddenly become anemic. I don't think that if, Evan Stewart got hurt, which has happened before, or, last year Tez Johnson went down. Yeah, Oregon's pass game wasn't quite as good, wasn't incompetent. You still had playmakers all over the place. So I've got some questions about the tight end room, and hopefully those get resolved as fall camp kicks back up in August. But Kenyon Sadiq, maybe the most singularly important player to a position group on the entire roster. I think the drop-off from Dante Moore to Austin Novosad is significantly less, hypothetically, significantly less than Kenyon Sadiq to whoever had worked their way to being the number 2 tight end. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all that good stuff. Offense coordinator talk. I love it. I really do. Will Stein won't be around forever. What would the future look like without Will Stein? First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money, it isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. All in one convenience? Well, that's what they're all about. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's half. monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Give them a look at monarchmoney.com. All right, so before I get to the offense coordinator point, I'm going to talk about it more on tomorrow's show, but last week, and I've been doing some shows ahead of time because I'm on a trip right now, checking out Arches National Park as you listen to or watch this show. Sean Stewart is the latest transfer for Oregon basketball, power forward from Ohio State, kind of a supreme cook type. Again, more thoughts will come on tomorrow's show, but kind of the same sort of transfer, kind of not. I have a lot of thoughts, but I just wanted to make sure that you were all aware of that particular piece of news. But this question came in from Sir AC Chapman, and you can be a part of the mailbag too. YouTube comments, Twitter, you can become a Locked On Ducks insider where you get priority access and a bunch of other perks as well. Free 14-day trial when you click the link in the description below and sign up. This one came in via the Twitter mentions. With the tools we currently have, which offensive-minded OC would have us being, oh, that's him or that's them, offensive? And this is a strangely worded question, but essentially it's which offensive coordinator would you rather have between Will Stein, Chip Kelly, and Brennan Marion? So Marion, for those of you who don't know, is the architect of the go-go offense, which is wildly fun to run in EA College Football 25 if you can figure out all the reads and whatnot. And it's a fun, successful offense that got UNLV to the Mountain West title game each of the last 2 years. He's a former quarterbacks or receivers coach at Texas. He's seen as a rising star in the industry. He's now the head coach at Sacramento State, which is a pretty high-level FCS college football program that is going to make the jump up to FBS here within the next couple of years. So Will Stein is someone who I have always been a defender of because there is no other OC in college football. Whatever you think of the dink and dunk offense or all that sort of stuff, which I think is slightly overblown, it's not completely invalid. Oregon does not have as high of an average yards per attempt as other quarterbacks and offenses in the country, but there is no other offense in college football that has produced back-to-back Heisman Trophy finalists. Not a single one. Will Stein's the only guy. That's the foundation. Not the only reason, but the foundation and kind of the biggest point I make when defending him. You put him up against Chip Kelly, who's now the offensive coordinator at the Raiders after winning a national championship at Ohio State. Pretty hard to argue with the results there. It worked out. So if I were to rank those three, yeah, I'd put Chip Kelly number 1. I'd put Will Stein number 2 and Brennan Marion number 3. You know what all those guys have in common? Except for Marion, quite frankly, who I think very highly of. they all have really good players to work with. It turns out that makes your life better because Chip at UCLA, when he was the head coach, had to do recruiting. They're the number 2 program in their own city. They don't have great fan support or great NIL support. Like, UCLA is just not a great football situation. And he wanted to get out of there, didn't like being a head coach and all that stuff. When he was just calling plays and you gave him a bunch of high-end talent, what do you know? He was really good. Had a bad day, of course, against Michigan famously, and then made all the adjustments, and the offense was unstoppable en route to a national championship. So, in that sense, he's more proven than Will Stein, who had a lot of talent last year and was not as good. They were kind of matching wits in the first matchup on October 12th, but in the second matchup, when you're going against the same team, which is something that can happen, Will Stein hasn't been as good. I think that is a completely fair critique. Is first go round against Washington in 2023, Will Stein was good. The problem was the defense didn't make a couple stops, and there was 1 4th and 3 where I didn't like Will Stein's play call. And I think he even told Joel Klatt that he didn't like the play call, or I think Joel Klatt just said that he didn't like the call. But anyway, was not a fan of rolling Bo Nix out and making it a half field read. Like, he's a veteran guy. Don't let him do it. He didn't make that mistake again in the Pac-12 championship game, 4th and goal. They let Bo Nix slice and dice. So, there are individual moments where you can look at and go, he wasn't good here, wasn't good there, that was wrong, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, and Chip Kelly had a 10-point outing at home against Michigan as a 20.5-point favorite. Not great. He and Ryan Day put together a bad game plan. But in comparing those two directly, Chip had a good day the first time around, over 30 points on the road. Chip had a good time in the second game, 41 points, neutral site. Like, pretty darn good. Will Stein, really good the first time around. Second time, not so good. Got worked by Jim Knowles, who he'll have to go up against again when Oregon goes to Penn State on September 27th. So, Will Stein will not be Oregon's offensive coordinator forever. I think Tosh Lupoy can be Oregon's defensive coordinator as long as Dan Lanning wants him to be. Will Stein will be a head coach at some point, whether that's after this year or next year. The question then becomes, are you able to find someone who is as good as Will Stein? I think you can. I think Oregon's proven that they can go out and find high-level coaches to replace guys who leave that have also had a successful tenure at Oregon. Would Brennan Marion be that guy? Don't know, because he wants to be a head coach, and he is. But can you make the jump from FCS head coach to FBS head coach? It's rare. It just happened at Washington State. They hired Jimmy Rogers from South Dakota State. But for Oregon, I don't know that. I don't know that Marion would take that. It depends. There are a lot of factors at play. But overall, with regards to coaching hires, Dan Lanning has earned our trust. Kenny Dillingham left, found Will Stein. Both those guys are really good. You lose Junior Adams in the NFL, you bring in Ross Douglas. So far, I like Ross Douglas. Sample size is too small to have a full evaluation, but you lose Carlos Locke in Ohio State, you bring in Rashad Samples. I think a lot of Oregon fans would say that was an upgrade. And Carlos Locklin, really good. Rashad Samples, also very good. So, do I think you can do better than Will Stein? Yeah, sure, if you find the elite of the elite. But are you going to find many better? No, I don't think there's a long list of coordinators, offensive coordinators you would rather have than Will Stein. I think Andy Kotelnicki at Penn State is really good. Chip is now unavailable, of course, because he's in the NFL anyway. So Chip is really good. I would not take Lincoln Riley as an offense coordinator. I would not take his brother Garrett Riley. I would not take, Lane Kiffin would be pretty good. But again, that's not a feasible hire, right? I'm just talking overall play callers in college football. So Stein's one of the best. I hope Oregon can get 2 more years out of him. I don't know that they will. It depends on how the coaching cycle works itself out after this upcoming season. But when you've spent 3 years as Oregon's offense coordinator and you win as much as Oregon has and the offense is as good and the Heisman, trophy finalists are there, you're going to get a lot of attention. So for those of you that are not as high, and I think that's a minority on Will Stein, it won't be around forever. But for people like me that like him, we'll enjoy him while we got him. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.